Okay, we're now going to get started with part 1 of our dissection, which is looking at the external parts of the brain, so our external examination. So we have our preserved sheep brain, and we're going to set the brain down on its flatter side. Okay, so this is its flatter side, so we're setting it down on its flatter side on the pan in order to examine it. And when we're doing that, we can notice that the brain has two halves or two hemispheres. And if we turn it so that it's facing sort of us, because we're looking down and this is the superior view, so we're looking at the superior view of the brain, we can see that this is the right hemisphere of the brain and this would be the left hemisphere of the brain. We can also here identify the cerebrum. So all of this structure here would be the cerebrum, and we can see the cerebellum. So cerebrum dealing with a lot of our thinking and processing, visual information, all of our senses, so smelling, touch, taste, all that, and also dealing with motor control, all done in the cerebrum. Cerebellum more with equilibrium and balance. And then we can see the spinal cord coming out the back of our brain. So also looking at the superior view here, we want to identify our different lobes and what they look like from the superior view. So our frontal lobe would be in this section. You can use the probe here too, so my fingers aren't taking up a lot of space. But this would be the frontal lobe. Here we would have the parietal lobe or parietal lobes. Temporal lobes would be further down here. Occipital lobe toward the back here. And then we can also identify the sensory and motor cortexes. So remember, the motor cortex is in the frontal lobe. It's the last section of the frontal lobe, so it's going to be right across here on our brain. And then that's the motor cortex, and then the sensory cortex would be behind it, and that's the first part of the parietal lobe. So motor cortex is in your frontal lobe, sensory cortex would be in the parietal lobe. So all of those different structures from our superior view. So when you are looking at the brain, make sure you're noticing the difference between the cerebrum and the cerebellum. So there are some similarities. They both have a wrinkled appearance, but what are some differences? So go ahead and think about that when you're looking at the brain. And then also, do you see those ridges and grooves on the brain? So you should see these ridges, should see the grooves, and you'll notice there's some like dark material here, or it almost looks black. Those are just blood vessels, so that's just blood and blood vessels on the brain there. But a lot of times you can kind of see them in the grooves. So think about what those ridges and grooves are called, how they look different, and when you're touching the brain, how's the surface of the brain feel? So take notice to how you think it feels when you touch the brain. So that all dealt with the superior view of the brain.